According to traditional history, New Zealand is the last major landmass to be inhabited by humans. This remote island, located in the southwest Pacific, remained uninhabited until the first Maori Polynesians arrived around 1300 AD. However, an incredible discovery has been made on the North Island of New Zealand, which may completely destroy our established understanding of the ancient history of this place. Amidst the dense vegetation of the Kaimanawa Range lies a large megalithic structure known as the Kaimanawa Wall, a formation of stones so precisely fitted that it has sparked heated debate about its origins, challenging our understanding of New Zealand's historical past. The wall itself is a series of tightly fitted stones, which at first glance seem to be laid very precisely. The stones are massive, some estimate that each of them weighs several tons. The stones were found to be at least thousands of years old, and were made from ignimbrite volcanic stone, consisting of compressed sand and ash. The nearest deposit of such stone is 5 kilometers away. This aspect alone has given rise to speculation about the level of complexity required to build such a structure. If, of course, it were the work of human hands. Upon closer inspection, the arrangement of the stones reveals almost geometric precision. The stones are arranged in a way that suggests a deliberate pattern with straight lines and angles, which is unusual in natural rock formations. This peculiar arrangement has led some researchers to suggest that the wall could be the remains of a large megalithic structure, part of which has not yet been excavated. So what kind of megalithic structure is this, who built it and when exactly? This is what we will talk about today. In 1996, archaeologist Barry Brailsford conducted research on the wall. He noted that the side faced due north, a very remarkable feature and unlikely to be a coincidence. There are many strange things in this wall. If your back is to it, you are facing due north. This may be a coincidence, but note on the compass there are 359 other points where the wall could be facing. But she is looking due north. It is worth noting that many ancient megalithic monuments are oriented precisely to the true north, for example, the pyramids of Giza, Stonehenge and many others. Brailsford concluded that the stone blocks at the site were not natural formations, but were carefully cut and stacked on top of each other. Brailsford's sensational discovery led to the publication of an article in the New Zealand Listener newspaper entitled The Mystery of the Megalith, whether the giant stones in the Kaimanawa Forest Park are evidence of an ancient New Zealand civilization. In the article, Brailsford made the following statement. There was no doubt that the stones were artificially carved. The 4 visible stones in the front wall were identical, almost 1.5 meters high and 1 meter wide. In one place it was possible to stick your hand into a cavity covered with stones and feel the back edge and the front edge of the next tier. The front part is unusually smooth, without any traces of processing. The gaps where the blocks joined were as thin as a knife blade. Further up the hill, the tops of other rocks jutted out. Most likely, the structure is much larger and part of it is underground. The Waitaha are an ancient New Zealand people who are often mentioned in discussions of the early history of New Zealand. But their precise historical context is somewhat controversial and is not widely accepted in mainstream academic circles. When they lived, what exactly they did, and so on. According to some information, especially that contained in some non-academic sources, the Waitaha were the first wave of settlers in New Zealand. Barry Brailsford is also one of those historians who believes that the Waitaha settled New Zealand long before Maori. Therefore, he initially attributed this structure to them. He even spoke with some of the elders of this tribe, asking them about the origin of the structure. He was stunned by what he was told. This structure was here before the Maori and even before the Waitaha tribe. The blocks extend 25 meters in a straight line from east to west. Explorer Brian Forster, who visited all the ancient megalithic sites around the world, was fascinated by the Kaimanawa Wall. And having visited it, he noted that the structure is the only stone structure in the entire territory, and he did not find any other stones within a radius of 32 kilometers from the site. He also noted that the flat stone blocks were set in the same way as those he examined in Cusco in Peru, for example. We have carved giant stone blocks connected to each other, without any mortar. This is an ancient building technology that can be seen not only in Peru, but also in other parts of the world, such as Egypt. This is a non-destroyable form of polygonal masonry, or as it is also called, polygonal masonry. It was developed by cultures that had no communication with each other, and the distance between them was a couple of thousand kilometers. And none of these cultures had sufficient tools to mine, transport, cut and place these stones in the right order. Many believe that these cultures actually inherited these places and that their true builders were part of a global and technologically advanced ancient civilization that died at some point in time, perhaps due to some kind of cataclysm. Returning to the Cayman Wall, it was also noted that there is a chamfer on the top stones. If you move to the other side of the structure, the beveled edges on the stones will be identical. A careful examination shows that behind the first batch of blocks there are several more layers separated by an ideal gap. The surface of each block is smooth, as if it had been processed, but there are other mysteries. It is noteworthy that the angle at which these stones are located reflects the general slope of the hill itself. A third piece was discovered nearby, demonstrating the same exact symmetry and arrangement. In addition, they all have beveled edges, which can be seen on the main structure. This sequence raises questions about the true nature of the building. Could it be that this is something much more complex than just a stone wall? Maybe these are really ancient pyramids, similar to those that were discovered in America? It is worth noting that most American pyramids were originally indistinguishable from natural landscapes, since they were completely covered with soil and vegetation. Take the example of the pyramids at Teotihuacan, which resembled ordinary hills on the surface of which there were no visible stones. Similarly, the pyramid temple at Tekeli showed only a small part of its structure. It looks like the wall in New Zealand is something similar. In 2019, a study was published on New Zealand's Tureo Channel, which showed a remarkable discovery using ground-penetrating radar. As shown in this photo, at a depth of 2 or 3 meters below the soil level, the ground-penetrating radar showed a picture identical to that on the surface. This means that underground its structure continued in the same pattern with more massive blocks of ignimbrite stacked together. In addition, the video shows some very intriguing notches on the surface of the hard rhyolite. All this information taken together suggests that this structure was something much more complex than a simple wall, but what is interesting to note is that volcanic rocks, especially those with high silica content, are commonly found in areas with geological faults and are associated with strong magnetic fields. The presence of water flowing over such rocks can generate electrical currents using the properties of silica, similar to its use in computers for storing and conducting information. The site's location on a fault line known for its strong magnetic and toric energies has led many to speculate that the structure could serve as some kind of energy container that harnesses the Earth's natural forces. Despite all the conclusions, the New Zealand government rejected the version that this structure is the construction of an advanced ancient civilization that settled in New Zealand long before Maori. In fact, the government banned any archaeological excavations at the site. How can you see the sign installed in front of the structure? The official position of the authorities is that this place is nothing more than a natural formation or a byproduct of volcanic activity that occurred a long time ago. But how could they be so sure without doing proper excavation? Moreover, why do they prohibit others from doing something similar at this place? In general, there are many more questions. But we can find, perhaps, part of the answers in the ancient story of the giants, among the Nephilim who once inhabited the earth in ancient times. After all, it is the size of these creatures that can determine such large and incredible buildings in antiquity in their technology. Many archaeological finds around the world prove that giants lived on earth, and this is evidenced not only by frescoes, bas-reliefs, and statues, but also by old legends, fairy tales, and epics. Different nations, of course, have their own, but no matter where you are, you will find mention of giants everywhere. Look at these statues that are in the Vilnius Cathedral, giants with books in their hands. Look who's lying next to them. Are there really dwarfs and a lion or a car, or maybe just the man himself of such gigantic stature? But those same gigantic books, the size of which cannot be justified by anything, and most importantly, it is simply inconvenient and costly. But what about architecture? Why do people, even the tallest, need such huge sizes? What about this balcony railing? For the common man it is gigantic. What is the history of the giant people of the 18th and 19th centuries? Why are these exhibits not exhibited in official museums? Have you ever wondered why or for whom such huge doors were installed in different parts of the world, or maybe a fairy tale like the giants were not fictional characters? Remember the fairy tale, Jonathan Swift's Gulliver's Travels. A man of normal height who has visited both the land of giants and the land of Lilliputians. In the photo of a door in Barcelona, in the area of the old town of El Born, pay attention to the height at which the door handles are installed, which a modern person of average height can only reach. On the island of Burana in Italy there are doors, door handles and handrails that are taller than the average height of a modern person, and who knows why? For whom were the handrails installed so high? The height of these gates of St. Isaac's Cathedral in St. Petersburg is 6.8 meters. There are abrasions as if it has been used for a long time. And if we take into account the anatomical features of a person, it turns out that the handrails were used by people or a person at least 5.5 meters tall. Still think that this is some kind of allegory of majesty, that there were no people of gigantic stature? Then let's turn our attention to an equally interesting source of information, namely ancient bas-reliefs, statues, and high relief. So, before you is the Arch of Constantine in Remya. Along with ordinary people, we see really big characters. They are in the foreground and much higher than everyone else. There are no comments on this anywhere. Facade, St. Peter's Basilica in Bologna. The people here are different, and this can be clearly seen by the size of their heads. Because two small ones are trying to tie up a much larger man, and on the right there is a giant sitting with a pet, some kind of flying hawk of an unknown breed with a human face. How do you like this statue, where a man holds a sheep, which is approximately the size of a kitten, and these statues are located in St. Petersburg near the famous Atlanteans. Please note, a giant and a man of ordinary height, which does not even reach his waist. Who are they? Where did you come from? If today, for example, gigantism is considered a disease and people who have this pathology do not live long, then these guys were genetically absolutely healthy, they just had enormous height and naturally large proportions. So friends, in order to understand what is happening, let's turn to the Holy Scriptures. The Nephilim, as the Old Testament says, descended from angels and mortal women. That is, the sons of God and the daughters of men came together, and from this union strange people of enormous stature were born. It is noteworthy to the Nephilim that the angels with whom the women had intercourse were fallen. That is, they decided to leave their heavenly post and come down to earth to live with the daughters of men. In general, this well explains the appearance of unusual technologies in ancient times, when people should not have had this at all. Where do these gigantic buildings come from? Incomprehensible technologies with the help of which various projects like the Egyptian pyramids were implemented, but if we are dealing with those who own the secrets of the sky, then all questions disappear completely. The genealogy seems to have been sorted out. But let's talk about those giants who actually lived next to us quite recently. There are whole biographies, whole stories about them. Let's start with one of the most famous, Fyodor Makhno, the highest person in the Russian Empire. At one time he was known all over the world, but now he is almost forgotten. Weighing 182 kilograms, his height was 285 centimeters. He came from an ancient family, whose ancestors moved to Russia, from the south from Syria. Makhnov's parents, as well as his two sisters, were of quite normal height. His children were very tall, but in any case not giants. The boy was born very large and his mother died during childbirth. Feed was raised by his grandfather, who loved him very much. The amazing child's talents showed up early. At 8 years old, the child could lift an adult. His father taught him to play the harmonica. At the age of 12, he cleared the 2-meter bar. He could sleep for more than 24 hours straight. Other children laughed at him because of his height. And for this he took off their hats and hung them on the ridge of the roofs of the bathhouse or barn. Due to his son's growth, Fyodor's father had to rebuild the hut by raising the ceilings. As his height increased, so did the boy's strength. He could lift an adult man, independently pull a cart with hay, and helped in the construction of houses by lifting heavy logs. The local landowner Korzeniewski learned about the young boy's abilities and hired him to clear the boulders from the boulders that were interfering with the work of the water mill in the nearby river. Long-term work in very cold water played a very unfavorable role in Fedor's life. He caught a cold and the subsequent illnesses made themselves felt throughout the rest of Makhov's life. At the age of 14, the 2-meter young man no longer fit in the house. Because of this, my father had to build up the walls by several meters. A local blacksmith was commissioned to make a custom bed. However, he was overloaded with work and did it all summer. In the end, it turned out that Feed had outgrown this bed, and it was problematic to dress and put shoes on the tall guy. Everything is made to special order. We had to earn money for clothes in Vitebsk at the Peravsky Bazaar. It was there that the extraordinary teenager was noticed by the German Otto Bielinder, who owned a traveling circus, an enterprising German, who quickly realized what benefits could be derived from the boy's height and suggested that Feden's father let his son go to Germany to perform in the circus. It didn't take long to persuade the father, and the 14-year-old the young man set off to conquer Europe with his abilities. When he turned 16, a contract was signed with him to perform, and Fyodor Makhnov became a circus performer. Fedor had a busy life full of travel, he had a family, and he lived only 36 years. In 1934, Makhnov's remains were exhumed for scientific purposes and sent to the Minsk Medical Institute for study. During the war, the giant's skeleton was lost, like much else. Only photographs and descriptions taken by Professor Golub have survived. The question immediately arises, why did they want to study it? What mysteries could be associated with this, because given its origins from Syria, the ancient Babylonian land where the Nephilim could live, perhaps it has something to do with it? Friends, so you understand, this story does not end with Fyodor Makhnov. In general, as you can see, friends, the story of the giants remains one of the most important and mysterious. Why aren't they talking about this openly? Why don't they recognize the existence of an entire intelligent civilization that later became extinct?